The cub's claws scraped across the stone floor, and every hunter in the den went silent at once. I felt it before I understood it, that tight drop in my chest that comes right before something changes forever. My name is Korath, and I have hunted beside my pack since I was old enough to stand on 4 legs. We do not scare easily. We are the ones who make other creatures scare. But that night, in our own den, under our own sky, something looked at us and did not look away. It started as a simple lesson. Every cub in our pack must learn where they stand. It is how we raise strong hunters. The young ones challenge someone weaker, someone who will not fight back, and they learn the shape of their own voice. For 3 months, the human named Daniel had lived among us, given to our pack under the peace agreement between his people and ours. He was thin, he was slow, and his teeth were flat and useless. Every hunter who looked at him saw the same thing: prey. So when the cub, Veka, decided it was time to prove himself, he did not choose another cub. He did not choose a small animal from the forest. He walked straight toward the human, chest puffed out, lips pulled back over his teeth, and let out the loudest roar his small lungs could hold. I remember smiling when I saw it. We all did. This was going to be easy entertainment, the kind we tell stories about for seasons. The great human, brought low by a child not even fully grown. Daniel was sitting near the fire pit, wrapping cloth around a tool he had been fixing. He did not jump. He did not run. He simply stopped moving his hands and turned his head toward the cub, slow and calm, like he had all the time in the world. For a moment, nothing happened. The cub roared again, closer now, his small body shaking with the effort, spit flying from his open mouth. Around the den, hunters leaned forward. Someone let out a low laugh. This was the moment we expected the human to fall back, to raise his hands, to show us the fear that every prey animal carries in its blood. Instead, Daniel stood up. He did not stand quickly. He rose the way our own alpha rises, unhurried, certain, like standing itself was a kind of warning. The fire behind him threw his shadow long across the stone floor, and for the first time since he arrived, nobody in that den was laughing. The cub, caught in the middle of his own performance, faltered. His roar cracked in his throat and came out smaller than before. He looked toward his mother, toward the pack, searching for the reaction he expected. But every eye in that den was locked onto the human, and every one of us had gone still. Daniel took 1 step forward, just one, and then he opened his mouth and roared back. I have heard many sounds in my life. I have heard the death cry of prey animals twice my size. I have heard the war calls our own alpha uses to gather 300 hunters before a hunt. I have heard the sound the wind makes when it drags itself through the mountain passes in the cold season, high and sharp and full of warning. None of those sounds prepared me for what came out of that small, soft-toothed creature standing by the fire. It was not loud in the way our roars are loud. It did not shake the walls or rattle the bones hanging near the entrance. It was something else, something lower and older, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest and push out through his whole body at once. His shoulders rolled forward, his hands curled. His eyes, usually calm and quiet, went sharp and still, locked onto the cub with a kind of focus I had only ever seen in our own best hunters right before they close in on a kill. The cub's legs folded under him. It was not something he chose to do. None of us chose what happened next. Every hunter in that den, myself included, felt our bodies lock in place, muscles frozen, breath caught halfway in our throats. It is a thing bred into every predator, deep in the oldest part of the mind, a warning system that switches on before thought has time to catch up. Something bigger is here, something that does not need to prove what it can do. Every part of me screamed that single message, and I could not move against it even if I wanted to. The cub's mother, one of our fiercest hunters, a female who had once faced down a pack of hollow wolves without blinking, stood frozen, with her mouth half open and her claws still resting on the ground. Our alpha, seated at the head of the den, had not moved from his place, but his ears were pinned back flat against his skull, a sign none of us had seen from him in years. Daniel did not move any closer. He did not need to. He held the roar for 3 long seconds, maybe 4, and then let it fade the same way it had risen, slow and controlled, like he had simply chosen to stop rather than run out of breath. When he closed his mouth, the den was so quiet I could hear the fire cracking behind him. The cub, small and shaking, tilted his head back and exposed his throat to the human. It is the oldest sign among our people. Surrender. I am not a threat to you. Please do not finish what you started. Daniel looked down at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he crouched, bringing himself down to the cub's height, and reached out one hand, palm open, fingers relaxed. He placed it gently on the top of the cub's head, the same way our own hunters comfort a young one after a hard lesson. Good roar, he said quietly. You will be strong one day, but you must learn who to test and who to leave alone. The cub did not move for several seconds, too stunned to process kindness after fear. Then, slowly, carefully, he leaned into the hand resting on his head, the way any young creature leans toward comfort once the danger has passed. Our alpha rose to his feet then, and every hunter in the den turned to him, waiting for guidance, waiting to understand what we had just witnessed. He walked forward, past the fire, until he stood only a few steps from Daniel, studying him with the same sharp focus we use when we are deciding whether something is worth our attention. You have hidden this, the alpha said. It was not a question. Daniel straightened up, brushing dust from his knees. We do not hide it, he said. We simply do not use it, unless we must. My people learned long ago that strength shown too often becomes weakness. A roar given away for free loses its meaning. I found my voice returning slowly, along with the rest of my pack. Around me, hunters were beginning to shift and murmur, the shock of the moment fading into something else, something closer to respect mixed with unease. Your kind hunted, I said, before I could stop myself. Every eye turned toward me, but I pressed on. You hunted creatures larger than yourselves. I have heard the old stories from the traders. Is this true? Daniel turned to look at me, and for the first time since he arrived in our den, I felt like I was truly being seen by him, measured the way a hunter measures another hunter. It is true, he said. Long before we built anything, before we had metal or fire in bottles, we hunted animals many times our size and strength. We did not have claws sharp enough to finish a fight quickly. We did not have jaws strong enough to end things in one bite. So we learned other ways. We learned to work together, to plan, to wait, to run farther than any other creature could run, until the animal we hunted had nothing left to give. We learned to make sound and shadow work for us, to make ourselves seem larger and more dangerous than we were, until the moment we needed to be dangerous for real. The den had gone completely silent again, but this silence was different. It was the silence of understanding. We are not loud because we are afraid to be quiet, Daniel continued. We are quiet because being loud all the time teaches nothing. A pack that roars constantly stops noticing when the roar means something. We save it, and when we use it fully. Our alpha lowered his head, not in submission, but in something closer to acknowledgement, one leader recognizing something worth respecting in another. You have lived among us for 3 months, he said. You allowed my hunters to believe you were without teeth. I have teeth, Daniel said simply. I simply did not need to show them until your cub asked me to. A low sound moved through the gathered hunters, not quite a laugh, not quite a murmur of agreement, something in between. I felt the tightness in my chest begin to ease, replaced slowly by something I had not expected to feel toward this soft, quiet creature who had lived among us for months without complaint or challenge. Vecca, the cub, looked up at his mother, then at the alpha, then finally back at Daniel. his young eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination that only the very young can hold at the same time. "Will you teach me?" the cub asked, his voice small but steady. "How to make that sound?" Daniel smiled then, the first real smile I had seen from him since his arrival. "It is not a sound you learn," he said. "It is a promise you keep to yourself, that you will not use your strength carelessly, and that when you must use it, you will use it completely. The sound follows the promise, not the other way around." The cub did not fully understand, I could tell, but he nodded anyway, the way young ones do when they sense something important has been said, even if the meaning has not yet settled into place. I looked around the den at my pack, at hunters who had spent 3 months believing they understood exactly what kind of creature lived among us. I understood now that we had been wrong, not because Daniel had lied to us, but because we had never thought to ask the right question. We had judged him by his teeth and his claws, and the softness of his skin, and none of those things had told us anything true about what he was capable of. That night, as the fire burned low and the pack settled into an uneasy but respectful quiet, I found myself watching Daniel from across the den, no longer seeing a guest to be tolerated, but a hunter of a different kind entirely, one who had simply chosen, for 3 long months, not to remind us what he was. And I understood, finally, why his people called themselves human, and why every story about them, no matter how quiet the beginning, seemed to end the same way.